an absolute tragedy, a disaster, and what could very well be a massacre has occurred in the Gaza Strip. There was a food line and some food trucks that were transporting foreign aid. We still don't know what countries the foreign aid was from, but it was from foreign countries. It was being transported into the Gaza Strip. And one second, I want to make sure I get the street names correct here. Harun al-Rashid Street in Western Gaza City in the Sheikh Al-Jin area. So the aid trucks came up, and what happened is people swarmed them. Because according to the UN, 500,000, 500,000 people in Gaza are on the brink of starvation. I think in northern Gaza, they say like 1 in 6 children face acute malnourishment to the point of like, obviously, like they could die. They could die soon if they are not given nutrition. And so there is a desperate need for aid to get in there, which is a major motivator for why people want a ceasefire as soon as possible, so aid can freely flow into the city. And so you don't have incidents where, well, people are collecting aid and then they get bombed, or the aid isn't able to get in because they're trying to engage in a siege, or the aid doesn't get in because the aid drivers think they might get bombed or killed. And that's part of the reason why people are pushing right now so hard for a ceasefire. And as these trucks were going in, they get swarmed, and then this is when the story differentiates. So what the Israelis say happened is that as these trucks got swarmed, then people got trampled. And this is what they say now. At the start, the story was a little different, but this is what they say now. The people got trampled, and then at a separate location, there were people who approached the Israelis in a threatening manner. They say they don't have any photos or video or anything to prove the threatening advance, and they haven't gotten to specifics of what that threatening advance is. Maybe they will over time. And so they opened fire, and then the opening fire killed other people. The opening fire, according to CNN, includes, and I believe the Israelis have confirmed this, tank shots, and CNN has also said drone shots. And so that means the tanks firing, drones firing, as well as, of course, small arms fire, which we do have audio of, and we are going to look at a video in a second, but we're going to have to cut out some stuff because of TOS violation. So that's the Israeli story. Now, that's different than what, of course, the Palestinian health ministry says, which of course is Hamas run, but it does have a record of not being completely bogus, according to NGOs that have worked in the region in a while. And if you look at previous conflicts, while there are discrepancies with Israeli numbers, the discrepancies are by like 1,000 to 2,000 people, not by like 10 to 20,000. Not to mention, Defense Secretary Austin said that 25,000 people had died in Gaza, and that was specifically in response to asking about women and children, not just civilians, but women and children specifically. So we know that at least a lot of Gazans are dying, and that's pretty close to the 30,000 number that the Gaza Ministry of Health has. But that Gaza Hamas-led organization also includes militant numbers. So if you kill 5,000 Hamas fighters, they will put that on top of the casualty total. Anyway, that is the Israeli story. That is what the Israelis say happened. What is said by the Palestinian Authority, not the Palestinian Authority, but Hamas Health Ministry and local Hamas officials is very different, and what eyewitnesses say is very different. So what eyewitnesses say happened is that as the trucks were getting swarmed, that the Israeli soldiers opened fire, and then the Israeli soldiers opening fire caused the people to then panic and caused the aid drivers, the people in the aid trucks, to panic, which then caused the Palestinians to get trampled by other Palestinians and by the trucks, which ran people over. And in both stories, both in the Israeli story and the Palestinian story, this is a truth that is in both, so it's probably true, is that the truck and the trampling killed more people than the gunfire. The gunfire still killed people. Like, I think the last estimate I saw was like something around 20 people were killed from the gunfire. The Gaza Ministry of Health, the last number I saw was 112 killed and 760 injured. I have no clue if that number is accurate or not, but I do have some footage from the event that I want to show you guys. None of these numbers have been independently verified yet. There's no independent verification on the ground. Here is footage from the ground showing Gazans running away as the chaos ensues, and you can hear some machine gun fire in the distance. Also, for the tank shots, I do want to add one more clarification. The Israelis say that the tank shots were fired as a warning, because they saw the, according to them, they saw the panic and they saw the trampling, and so that they fired the tank shot to settle the situation down or to protect themselves. Again, you'd have to go, you can go look at their statement specifically, but they said it was a warning tank shot. There's a tank. And now it's turning. There you can hear machine gun fire.
حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل. حسبي الله.
Okay, so we're gonna stop it here for TOS reasons, because past this point you start to see dead bodies and you start to see people who are injured very badly. So here's the footage on the ground. There has been some political response to this already. Bernie Sanders came out and stated, children are starving in Gaza. Instead of opening up the borders and allowing humanitarian aid to come in, Israeli soldiers are shooting people who are desperately trying to get food off of trucks. This must stop. The U.S. cannot continue funding the Netanyahu war machine. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children are on the verge of starvation. The United States must step in immediately and deliver aid directly to those in need through unilateral airdrops if necessary. There has been some footage of food being airdropped in. I know the Canadian Air Force also airdropped some supplies to the population, even though some of it did seem to actually end up in Israeli territory due to the wind, according to the Israeli government. Now, I do want to say that the Israeli government released footage from the event. Now, they are showing this footage to, prove their story and showing that, hey, look, these trucks were swarmed, and then the overcrowding and the trampling killed them. It wasn't us. But if you look at the way that this is edited, it shows that the trucks were swarmed, but it doesn't really prove anything else. Nobody is in either story, both the Palestinian story from local eyewitnesses, both the Hamas story and the Israeli story, all of them acknowledge that the trucks were swarmed. What is disagreed upon is what initiated the panic that led to all the people being trampled, whether it was just caused in chaos and then the Israelis reacted afterwards, or if it was the Israeli gunfire, tank fire, and drone fire that caused the panic, which then caused the truck drivers to drive away, running people over, and caused people to get trampled and killed all these people. That is the thing that is disagreed upon. It is also not disagreed upon that the Israeli gunfire also killed people on the ground. And we still don't know exactly the nature of this provocation that caused them, according from the Israelis, to have to open fire on these people, again, starving, who needed food. And that is what they were gathering from these trucks. That's why they were at the trucks, because the situation in Gaza is horribly desperate. Over 500,000 people on the brink of starvation. So here you can see people around the trucks trying to get food, swarming it. What I really don't like about this video specifically, though, is in this video, before and after, there's a massive jump cut. And this is something that has made me uncomfortable with a few other Israeli videos that they release, is there would be a real strength if they released the full unedited, since this is like an aid delivery, there's not like extremely important military targets here, the full unedited interaction to see when did people start running and panicking, what caused the running and panic. But instead, it shows, these different aid trucks being swarmed, people trying to get food off of it in a starving, besieged strip of land in the Gaza Strip. And then it cuts to the after with the whole area covered in bodies and a bunch of people laying dead and people having already run away. And this is the moment where it does that. So we're going to keep that off screen for TOS reasons. But past this point, there is a bunch of people running and you can see the running afterwards, but it's not unedited. And so if the Israelis are telling the truth here and you want to get rid of the, get rid of the jump cut and you want to show the full interaction, then it would be a lot easier for me to believe their story. I would still need other evidence. I still need to look through all the eyewitness stuff. But this right here, in my opinion, doesn't really prove anything. Because all it is they're swarming the trunks, which everybody agrees with, and then it cuts and a bunch of people are dead. It doesn't show how those people died. It doesn't show them either being trampled to death or being shot, being blown up by a drone, or the tank blew them. It doesn't know any of that. It's just a jump cut. And so if they wanted to assuage concerns, you don't need to prove to us that the people of Gaza are starving and they all rushed at food. I think everybody could have put those two things together. They need to show us that they weren't the ones that either A, caused the stampede in the first place, and B, that they really were provoked and needed to open fire on this crowd of people who desperately needed food. I wanted to talk about this report because we talked about the Gaza aid attack yesterday, and all the reports I was reading, all the reports we were talking about, emphasized that the reports seem to suggest, from the Israeli side especially, but from some local sources as well, that the majority, while there were casualties from gunfire, from Israeli gunfire, the majority of the casualties came from the trampling, either the trampling that preceded the Israeli gunfire or the trampling that came after the Israeli gunfire, according to local and Palestinian sources. But this is the first report we're getting from a Gaza doctor that suggests otherwise, saying that 80% of the wounds at the hospital where the victims came that survived came from the aid convoy Israeli gunfire, and not from being trampled and ran over by the aid trucks that were fleeing, or from the other people trying to run and get away after they had swarmed the aid trucks due to the population starving in Gaza. Let's read a little bit about this. The head of the Gaza City hospital that treated some of the Palestinians wounded in the bloodshed surrounding an aid convoy said Friday that more than 80% had been struck by gunfire, suggesting that there was heavy shooting by Israeli troops. At least 115 Palestinians, last number we checked it was 112, so 3 have died since, and more than 750 injured. The report I last saw from the Gaza Ministry of Health said 760, so that's down 10. Others injured Thursday, according to health officials. When witnesses said nearby Israeli troops opened fire as huge crowds raced to pull goods off an aid convoy. Israel said many of the dead were trampled in a stampede that started when the desperate Palestinians in Gaza rushed the aid trucks. Israel said its troops fired warning shots after the crowd moved towards them in a threatening way. Again, move towards them in a threatening way. They said, the last report I read said this. Everything I've heard since then said this. And the one other report I've seen from the Israelis seemed to suggest that they said militants were in the area and that they were fired upon. But that's different than the crowd moved towards them in a threatening way. Dr. Mohammed Salah, the acting director of Al-Wada Hospital, told the Associated Press that of the 176 wounded brought to the facility, 142 had gunshot wounds and the other 34 showed injuries from the stampede. He couldn't address the cause of the death of those killed because the bodies were taken to government-run hospitals to be counted. Dr. Hussein Abu Safia, director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital, said the majority of the injured taken there had gunshot wounds in the upper part of their bodies, and many of the deaths were from gunshots to the head, neck, or chest. The bloodshed underscored how the chaos in Israel's 5-month-old offensive has crippled the effort to bring aid to Gaza's 2.3 million Palestinians, a quarter of whom the UN says face starvation, about 500,000. The UN and other aid groups have been pleading for safe corridors for aid convoys, saying it has become nearly impossible to deliver supplies in most of Gaza because of the difficulty of coordinating with the Israeli military, ongoing hostilities, and the breakdown of public order, including crowds of desperate people who overwhelm aid convoys. UN officials say hunger is even worse in the north, where several 100,000 Palestinians remain, even though the area has been isolated and mostly leveled since the Israeli troops launched their ground offensive in late October. UN agencies haven't delivered aid to the north in more than a month because of the military restrictions and lack of security, but several deliveries by other groups reached the area earlier this week. Acknowledging the difficulty of getting aid in, U.S. President Joe Biden said Friday the U.S. soon will begin airdropping assistance in Gaza and will look for other ways to get shipments in, including possibly a marine corridor. Oh, so we're going to block the blockade for U.S. aid. Okay. The announcement came hours after Jordanian planes over northern Gaza dropped packages attached to parachutes, including rice, flour, and baby formula. Okay, so this is I would like this data to be documented, photographed, all of this to be examined by international monitors, these bodies particularly, so it can be clear that this isn't just one Gaza doctor, or this is one person with, oh, their biases are this way, so they could be saying anything. The sooner, and this is something that Hamas has been very bad at. I gotta be 100% with you, of bringing in international groups to examine these types of things. Because after the strike on that hospital, it was cleared up so quickly. All the damage was taken away. If Israel bombed that hospital, they could have brought in the entire press to try to examine that and bring in international monitors. There's a difficulty when it comes to the fact the Israelis don't want them to get in, and Israelis have been blocking them, but people have been smuggled in before. So it isn't impossible. I know that. But if there is evidence of all these people being shot, the sooner it is provided, I don't have any reason to believe that this doctor has lied. The sooner it is provided to the public sphere, the better. The sooner this evidence stacks up that doesn't align with the Israeli narrative, the harder it's going to be for the Israeli government, who has only provided, as of right now, a cut out overhead drone footage to prove that the trucks were swarmed, which nobody doubted. And then it cuts to then all the bodies being dead. Doesn't show how they died, doesn't show gunfire, doesn't show a stampede that killed all these people. It just shows the trucks being swarmed. You don't think Hamas has the ability to shoot down planes? I don't want the U.S. to airdrop aid and then be shot down for it. I think that considering the amount of people that are dying and the direct impact we are having in supporting of Israel, on top of the fact that this is affecting our image internationally, this is like the bottom of the barrel type of stuff we should be doing to save the population. It might come with some risk, but we've already had 3 U.S. servicemen get killed because of this war. 3 killed in a base in Jordan. So I think if we can lessen that horrific image of ourselves, not saying that this would do much of that anyway, then I have no problem with it. And plus, like, what are the odds they're going to get shot down? How many planes have gotten shot down over Gaza during this war? Has any? I don't know of any getting shot down. How many slow-moving low drones? It wouldn't. No, our planes would probably almost certainly be fine. But God, this is really bad. I'm sorry, but Israel has to justify to the world why they opened fire. They need to provide as much evidence as possible, body cam footage, the full uncut drone footage that they cut up. They need to provide witness testimony. This looks like a massacre from all intents and purposes, from local sources and from Palestinian sources and from these doctors, working, of course, with the official Palestinian sources. That needs to be taken into consideration. But the Israelis have not assuaged these concerns at all. And it is their job to justify, as the party that did the, firing, why they opened fire. And they have not done that whatsoever, which just leaves my mind racing and me leaning towards the worst conclusions.